Alright guys, welcome to episode number 5 of Tardis Talk, in which we'll be recapping what happened in the latest episode, The Girl Who Died, which featured Game of Thrones star Maisie Williams playing a character that could well be in the result of a crossover, as she felt somewhat similar to how she was as Arya Stark in Game of Thrones. So speaking of crossovers, we actually tweeted out the question, which shows would you like to see a crossover of in Doctor Who? And Elle, I think you've got some of the replies?
Yeah, we had quite a good response to that topic, and just a selection of a few on Twitter. Tim said he'd like to see Babylon 5 and see the interaction between Capaldi and just some of the fleshed out aliens from that series. Teva Elena, I think, I'm probably butchering it. He said he wants to see a Star Trek crossover, which would boldly go when, not where, which I like, where no one's been before. The Doctor Who show said they want to see Torchwood crossover. Seems as they're in the same universe. Heather Crossley said she wants to see X-Files because she wants to see the interaction between Mulder and Scully and Doctor and Clara. And the J-Man, he said Star Wars, and he said West because it's Star Wars and Star Wars is awesome.
You can't argue with that. J-Man knows what he's talking about.
Exactly.
So many good ones in there. Like Torchwood would be awesome. I'd love to see them explore like a little bit more with Torchwood and get that Torchwood team in. Although there's not many of them left. But that'd be really cool. What would you like to see?
Just pointing out as well, I think X-Files is a really good one. It's a bit subtle, and I think it kind of fit in it's very on Torchwood. But
it really would, like all the alien stuff.
Oh, I think it'd be awesome. I think me personally, because I'm such a huge fan of Once Upon a Time, I'd like to see maybe a crossover, maybe the Doctor can go to the Enchanted Forest and cook up some trouble with Regina and all those people.
That'd be really cool. We've already seen some storybooks elements last season with Robot of Sherwood. So we could get Robin Hood from Once Upon a Time and some other elements in there. That'd be really cool.
And plus he was a much better Robin in Doctor Who than the one that's in Once Upon a Time, so...
Absolutely. We've got some differences in there. I would love to see this week especially a Back to the Future crossover. How amazing would that be? So you've got Marty and Doc in there, 2 Docs in the TARDIS.
I'd definitely like to see the Doctor on his own hoverboard or something.
Oh, that would be amazing. Forget the guitar and the tank and things, just give him a hoverboard. That'd be ideal. What I was thinking though, theory wise, what if Doc Brown from Back to the Future is really Doc as in the Doctor? The DeLorean could just be a TARDIS with a working chameleon circuit.
Yeah, but isn't it supposed to be bigger on the inside?
Well, there you go, ruining my theory. that could have been so awesome. But I think that'd be an awesome crossover. We've got loads of good suggestions there.
I'd definitely like to see the Doctor and the other Doctor face off. I think it'd be who's got the bigger ego. It'd
be really cool, but 2 geniuses in there. I'm sure they could find Gallifrey. They'd bring it back.
Exactly.
So guys, make sure to get involved and tweet us your suggestions which you would like to see. You can tweet us now at TARDIS_talk. So get involved and let us know which crossovers you would like to see in an episode of Doctor Who. So let's get back to this week's episode, The Girl Who Died. So what did you make of this, Elle? Did you like it?
I really enjoyed it. The past 2 weeks they felt a bit thick and heavy, but for all there was a lot more deaths in this episode, it was a lot more fun and it was a bit of a laugh.
It was that was the big point that I kind of took from this one. We've had lots of heavy episodes to start the season, and it felt more like your sort of light-hearted, relaxed episode, which is usually what I kind of get as the first episode. Deep Breath kind of had that little feel.
I definitely welcomed it. I don't think I was overly intrigued to see where this one went. It looked good, and I wanted to see what Maisie Williams was like because I've never really watched Game of Thrones. I couldn't get into it, and it was kind of a good thing to see her. And like I said, for all it had a lot of death, it was a really, really fun episode, and there was a few gags here and there. It was
really gag heavy at times, with the yo-yo and things. And then we kind of had the Teletubbies son come in there with Odin. It was all a bit weird. It was quite Monty Python as well.
Yeah, it was actually, now you mention it, yeah.
But I don't know if it was one of my favourite episodes, but in terms of the comedy episodes, I really did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed it a lot more than the previous 2. For all the other previous 2 was a bit more had more story to it and a bit more mystery and things. I don't know, for some reason I came out enjoying this one a lot more than the other 2.
Yeah, the first couple were quite dark, so this one was a nice refreshing change. What did you make of the relationship between Clara and the Doctor in this episode?
It was a bit strange. I know I've spoke about I think Clara was going to die and things, but the Doctor was really he was a bit of an ass, actually. Like, I know he rejected the high five in the previous episode or the one before, but he was like really kind of nasty. Like, he said to her, get a new hobby, like when she said the doctor was her hobby and things. And it was another example of the doctor and Clara's roles reversing. Like, there was the speech about who'd held a sword, and the doctor and Clara both held the hands up, and it was like the equal, but the doctor wanted to kind of like run off and Clara wanted to save the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it could have been a case of like he was kind of preparing himself like for like there's been a lot of talk of him sort of thinking that he could lose Clara and he doesn't want to lose anyone else. Could he have been trying to like intentionally push her away by like acting in this way?
I kind of think that's what it might lead to. I think it might be a case of, well, him yet again being a coward, and instead of like dealing with the emotions, he's going to push her away instead so he doesn't have to deal with her death or whatever.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense like that. And like he's always been like labelled as the doctor who ran, and like Davros is someone that brought that up again like the start of this season. So it would kind of fit in with it.
It was interesting as well when Odin and the Mice were doing the scanner, like they identified like Clara as a threat, or she was like active or hero, and the doctor wasn't registered. He was a coward, or he was just like another farmer or whatever.
Yeah, he kind of just like stayed away. Like maybe he like I was going to say maybe he recognised them, but you had to like check his like 5,000-year diary to see who they were. But it was strange that this kind of doctor like backed away from that. And he knew something was going on. I think there's a point where the camera like pans to the... Well, I thought they were robots originally, but they didn't actually turn out to be robots. They were like an actual species in there. But it showed the sort of vial, what they had the testosterone extracted into in the arms of them. So the doctor kind of seen that, and he kind of realised it was going to be a harvest. And I think that was why he then sort of backed away. But it was strange to see him do that and kind of leave the rest of these villagers to fend for themselves.
He was like really strange in this episode. Like, he was going against his own rules. He was going to abandon the village, and he even says it's just another village. Like, he didn't really want to save it, and it wasn't until later on, God knows why he decided it. I think it was something to do with the baby or something. Like, he decided to be the doctor, and Clara said it was something along the lines of start running, because he was acting so out of character and being a coward. And he says in himself in the 50th anniversary, never cruel or cowardly.
Yeah, and he kind of went like back on this like the start of the episode, so it was kind of out of character for him. But then obviously we got like the big change through the episode, and he decided to actually do it. And then an even bigger change later on when we're seeing him sort of reveal the reason behind his face. What did you make of that? Did you like the explanation, or did you think we're kind of expecting something else?
I don't think we really got like a major explanation. It was kind of like just thrown out there. It was, the way it was done, it was brilliant. Like, they had the soundtrack and everything going, and it was like really hyped up moment. But I've kind of got my own little theory, so I'm going to bring that in again later on to go on with something else. But I know you like have a few talking points.
Well, I look forward to seeing what you say about it. But like, to me, I think I did a video like previously about like the doctor's face and things, and I thought, well, we might get a little bit more than this. But at the same time, even though it was like a simple explanation to say the face reminds him of like what was said and what Donna said, and that he's the doctor, and at the end of the day he saves people, so that's what he should be doing. I kind of thought that does make sense. It's a nice simple explanation to have in there, and I don't know, regardless of it, I just loved the way they done it. I thought it was like really good with the flashbacks, and it's something that we've seen like quite a lot. Well, we've talked about this a few times. So we've seen the flashback to the 10th Doctor and Donna, and it just shows the big impact that Donna had on the Doctor, both then and still now. So I think it's awesome. It's just a shame that Donna can't remember any of this.
Poor Donna's just sat somewhere not having a clue what's going on.
Exactly, it's just all gone over her head. But it just totally shows like the impact that she's had on his life, and the face, not so much the face, it's just reminding what she said, and that he is the doctor and he saves people.
Yeah, and just save that one person. You don't have to save everyone, but just one person.
Exactly, so it's a great point, and you know, it's what the doctor should be doing, trying to save people. And if you can't save anyone, just save that one person. Do you think we could maybe get more of an explanation going forward, or do you think this is probably going to be it?
I wouldn't be surprised if that's it and that's like how Moffat decides to leave it. But at the same time, like the more you look at it and go back to that scene, it didn't really explain much. It was just like, oh, well, you saved that one person before, so now you can save whoever you want.
Yeah, but I think that probably will be like all we'll get with it. It wouldn't surprise us if they did sort of revisit it in the future and there was like a little bit more to it. But I think in terms of it just being a simple explanation, I think it's something that fits. I'm quite interested to see if that's like Moffat's interpretation of it, or if that's like the reason that Russell T Davies had like come out and said, you know, he had a kind of explanation as to why the face fits, and it also fit in with Torchwood, because we did see him in Torchwood as John Frobisher, and we never actually got an explanation for that. We just got the one from the Pompeii episode. So I don't know if they'll really incorporate that and they'll actually go and explain it, but they could just say it's like the same thing that happened when we're seeing Gwen from Torchwood meeting Rose, and she says that she recognised her from the Unquiet Dead episode where we had like the gas monsters, because she was playing Gwyneth in that episode. So this is basically for that. It was just a case of an echo and representation of physical traits across the time rift. So it could be something like that. It's not a great explanation, so I kind of like the way that they've gone with this simple one. It's just nice and simple, and I think sometimes a nice simple explanation, that's all you need.
They could throw a total curveball and maybe John Frobisher could be the Minister of War.
That would be quite cool if that was the case. It's kind of that villain theme. So maybe that's a good one to bring up. I think we'll have to wait and see if they do actually address it.
I think with it being Torchwood, I doubt they will.
I think that's the only thing that makes us kind of query it. I think because it's Torchwood and it's not in the main show, then they can kind of get away with it.
It'd be a shame not to have some sort of recognition, but I can kind of understand why they wouldn't at the same time.
Absolutely. So, like, talking of the Doctor and, like, the way that he's been, because of this reveal of his face and remind him that he is the Doctor and he saves people, he made the decision to save Ashilda. What did you make of the decision? Was he right to save her? And did you like this new character?
I think if it was me personally, I wouldn't have saved her. Like, she did have honour in her death, and it kind of, in a sense, from my personal view, I think reviving her and making her immortal kind of takes away that honour. I don't know if it's just me. I like the character, but we didn't really see a great deal of her, to be fair.
Well, yeah, like you say, like because it's Maisie Williams, I think everyone kind of went in the episode thinking, you know, she's going to be a really big character. She's going to be like someone that we've probably met before, and there was like all this like thoughts going into it that would be the case. But being a new character, it was kind of different. It wasn't what I was expecting. She was very Arya Stark, like she is in Game of Thrones, in the way that she acts, and I think that's kind of a trend that you're getting in Doctor Who, because you're getting all these like female characters in there that are like strong, powerful women, and they really like stand up and fight instead of the kind of damsel in distress role that you might have got in the past. So I think
it's definitely something we'll see like different next episode, because it doesn't look like Clara's going to be in it a great deal. So maybe we'll see like a few different sides of Ashilda and like the consequences from the Doctor doing that. I think that's another tone of the series. I know we've touched upon mercy and death, and I think kind of like the consequences of the Doctor's choices and things are going to come into play.
Yeah, I think so. I think like one of the things that I've been thinking is the fact that he saved her, it's not something that he's now going to do all the time, because it was like quite an extraordinary way to go about it. And I think it was just a spur of the moment thing. I think if he was to think about it and rationalise it, then he wouldn't have gone through it. And I think that was like the scene afterwards where he's in the TARDIS and he's kind of questioning that decision and the sort of ramifications that that's going to have. Because giving that chip to her and sort of making her immortal, it makes me question, and I'm sure a lot of people that's seen the episode, if he's so worried about Clara, why didn't he just keep these two chips? Well, keep one of these chips and give it to Clara, so that if anything happens to her, or if she does die, he can use that to resurrect her, and then she'll be immortal.
Yeah, that's kind of one thing that irks me, and like I know there's like a few things coming up in the next episode, which I kind of think links in with my theory for Clara and like her possibly dying. But it seemed like a really odd choice to give, especially to give it to. I know why he did it, like so she could give it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But fair enough for the Doctor to save her, but to make her immortal, that's a huge thing. And there's obviously going to be repercussions from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the repercussions are going to be the kind of thing that stops him doing this again in the future. So, like, if something was to happen to Clara, I think whatever the outcome of this is with Ishilda, he's going to realise it was like a bad decision to do so, and that's going to actually stop him from doing the same kind of thing should something happen to Clara.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how things play out, and I think there will be sort of a big ramification. It's just, what is that going to be? So that kind of takes me on to the next talking point, and that is the end of the episode. And it kind of stays with Ishilda, because the end of the episode we're seeing her standing there, and the camera was panning round her, and it kind of gave that impression that a lot of time was passing. And it started off with her being really happy, and she was kind of rejoicing in the fact that she'd realised she was immortal. But then after the time passed, it turned out that maybe it wasn't everything that was cracked up to be. And like the doctor said, immortality isn't living forever, it's everyone else dying. And I think because of that, it's kind of affected her, and she's realised, it's not maybe the blessing that she thought it was, and maybe it's actually a curse.
Yeah, and it also showed it started with happiness, and then it looked like there was sorrow, and then there was just it was either a blank slate or anger. And it kind of makes you think as well, why didn't she give that chip to anyone else? I know she had a father and things, and you start to question, why hasn't she done this? How has she turned out? And that, I think that's just another example of the ramifications. The doctors give her this gift, but also it's kind of a curse because she has to watch everyone die, and having just one chip to save one person, that's a huge decision.
It is. It's a huge decision, and I thought a father could be someone that she could give that to, but then I'm sure a father would be the kind of person that would say, if you're going to live forever, I would want you to use this on someone that you're in love with and you want to keep around forever. So kind of being unselfish and going down that route. So it kind of brings that question up of who would she give this to? And I think this could kind of come in with the ramifications of the decision to not just bring her back, but to get that 2 chips. So maybe she could give that to someone else who turns out to be quite evil, maybe become a villain. We could even see them become the Minister of War.
It was kind of interesting because before we do this, we have our notes and things, and I just stupidly wrote that she was going to turn to the dark side. And if you kind of compare her to Anakin from Star Wars, he's supposed to be this good person who's going to bring balance to the Force and whatnot. And I think the Doctor thought that giving her immortality, she'd do good things. But obviously circumstances change. She's going to experience people dying around her, this, that and the other. And something like that is going to turn her dark. So it'll be interesting to see what she makes of the Doctor when she does meet up with him. Will she detest him or will she thank him?
Absolutely. I think Star Wars is something that's played both on my minds this week because of the new trailer, and I think it fits in with what you're saying, because that kind of power, and it is a power, it's a big thing to handle, and it's how does someone take that? Could it be too much for them, and it turns them, and that power and the sort of knowing that they're going to be around forever, losing everyone around them, I think it could affect someone, and it could maybe turn them kind of to the dark side, as you say. So maybe even she could become a villain. She could be someone that the Doctor meets again in the future, and he's created this own villain for himself, and this is all the Doctor's doing. Maybe this is why he runs in the first place, and he tries to not make these decisions.
I think he's better off just not meddling with people's lives.
Well, as long as it's a little thing, he says he doesn't mind the ripples. It's just these tidal waves, and I think this is definitely what he's created now. It's going to be interesting to see what the ramifications are and just how Ishilda is in this next episode, and if she's got any sort of remorse towards the Doctor for giving her sort of this power, and it turned out to be quite a curse.
That's the thing. It really is a double-edged sword. He's given her immortality, but he hasn't given her anything to take that away, and she has to grow up kind of in isolation. She'll never be unless she gives it to someone. She'll never be able to be with someone for an entirety.
Well, she'll have to just meet up with Captain Jack.
Oh God, I didn't mind Captain Jack, but yeah,
the two of them can just live forever and be happily ever after.
You never know. Oh, I was going to say maybe that's what she does, but it was Rose who gave Captain Jack, so just ignore me.
But I think it'll be interesting. I think it's always going to be a good point to see who she does like give that other chip to. I don't know if we'll get that straight away. Maybe we could see that, and it's all going to be interesting on this next episode because I'm not really sure like how it's going to play out, but I really want to see just what happens in like this time that's passed between the episodes leading into this, just to see how it's affected her and sort of what she is like, if she's the same Ishilda that we seen in the first episode, or if she has drastically changed over this long time period.
If it's anything to look at, like in the first episode, she's not so childish as much, but there's a lot of innocence about it, and then she goes from a drastic change to like being a highwayman and like robbing people. So I definitely think she's had a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah, I think she's had like a lot of loss and a lot of grief, and that's like really changed her. So I'm looking forward just to seeing what has caused that and how she is in this next episode. So it kind of takes one to this final talking point. She has become a hybrid, and that was what the Doctor said at the end of the episode. He says that she is now a hybrid. What's with all these hybrids? Is this the main series arc?
It kind of looks like it might be, and the Doctor's face, like once he said like the word hybrid, his like face sunk, and it was like another thing that he's done wrong. He's created the Dalek Time Lord hybrid. You could even say, that's why I left it earlier on, that the Dr. Donna was a hybrid, kind of caused by him and her experience in the TARDIS. You've got River Song from Amy Pond being pregnant. You've got like this Time Lord human hybrid. Mm-hmm. Now you've got a Shilda. You've got the Doctor's daughter who could kind of be a hybrid.
It's all good points, and I think especially with you mentioning River Song being a hybrid, knowing that she's come back into it in the Christmas special, I think she could be one of the odds-on favourites as well. But I like the fact that, you know, when Davros spoke of this prophecy, he said that a hybrid would be created from the merging of two great warrior races. And because to him, you know, the Daleks are everything and he's so proud of his creation, he just assumed that one of them races would be the Daleks. And then he assumed that obviously the other big one would be the Time Lords. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's not like set in stone. And these two, the mergings of these like two warrior races, it could be the Maya, because they were portrayed as being like one of the greatest warrior races in the galaxy. And then the Vikings as well, who are another great warrior race. So maybe Shilda could be, as this prophecy refers to, the merging of these two races.
I definitely think it's a really good point. Like you said, Davros is kind of like arrogant. He thinks like the Daleks, I think to an extent he probably thinks the Time Lords are a superior race as well, so he just assumes that's what the prophecy is. But like you said, it could easily be the Vikings, because the Vikings were like a huge part of like the Earth's history and things. So it could be the Vikings, and we know that the Maya are like a brutal force, even though they were pretty crap in the episode.
It would have been good to see them actually like do something, because they didn't really do too much. Like aside from like beaming people up and teleporting them into the spaceship, where like that took care of them. Like, they didn't really do too much to prove themselves as a great warrior race.
No, they were pretty cowardly, to be fair.
They look quite Nemesis-y like as well when they took off like the helmets.
I was like surprised like how graphic. For me personally, like, I wasn't scared of them or anything, but like surely from a child's eyes, those would have looked pretty terrifying. Like the amount of like teeth and things on them.
They did look like, I was going to say quite cool, but like from a child's perspective, like I suppose maybe it is like quite a bit to like take in. But I think Doctor Who, the way it's going, it is kind of more monsters and things that don't look the way they used to. Like they seem to look a lot more sort of realistic, but also like really nasty at the same time. It's kind of like it's a good mix. I think it makes it feel more realistic when you see something like that. But from like a child's eyes, I think it could be quite terrifying.
That's like one huge thing that I'm still loving about this series. Like we've got the fun moments, but then we have like entry points. Like we've got death and things, and like some of these monsters look incredible. And I'm definitely loving like this lot more, like this dark side, even if it's just like from the Doctor or the monsters or like the story. I'm just engrossed in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like a lot of people will say like friends of mine and things won't even sort of watch Doctor Who because they'll think, oh well, it's kind of a kid's show, but it's really not when you watch it. And like this season, especially last season, it's much more grown up. I think ever since Stephen Moffat took over, especially, it's had that kind of change, and it's now for like a wide audience of all ages. It's not like set for a certain like type. And I think because of that, we just get so much better stories where we get all this like hardcore stuff about feelings and the way people are, death. And then you've also got like the comedy moments like we're seeing this time. And I think it just all fits together so well.
I think an interesting thing as well, like, I do enjoy the comedy moments, but there's been quite far and few this series. Like, it's not like a huge overtone of an episode. Like, we had a few moments, but it was never like really, the threat was still there.
Yeah, I think maybe like part of that is like they know how to write for Capaldi now. So like the jokes that we have had now, it's been like jokes that are kind of fitting towards him. Whereas last season, some of them felt a little out of place, and I don't know if that was because like some of these stories were still written for Matt Smith's Doctor. Yeah. So maybe it could be a case that they're just like the way that they're writing now, they kind of get that feel of what kind of Doctor Capaldi's going to be, and maybe that explains it. But I think the comedy wise, it really goes well. I really enjoy it.
And I'm really loving like this, it kind of feels like rich in history and lore and things in the minute, which is something that like really interests me. Like, I know last week we predicted that Ishilda would be part of the Valkyries and stuff like that. And in a sense she kind of was. She will choose like someone who will live and someone who will die. And I'm kind of liking where I think it's going anyway. Like, I'm kind of thinking the Doctor's going to attempt to make Clara immortal or something. And like, I know next week we're going to have something called the Eye of Hades, which obviously Hades is like a huge part in Greek mythology and things. Mm-hmm. So what I decided to go back and like look if Hades had been in Doctor Who, and like he has, and it was a story with a master and things, and they had like a race called the Immortals. And interestingly enough, like the summary for the Immortals kind of sums up Ishilda. It's like a human race that could change the face, which is kind of like, maybe she's got that from the Maya, because they could change their appearance. Mm-hmm. They could teleport, and they could possess things like empathy and telepathy and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see if the Doctor's choice to make Ishilda immortal, maybe he created the immortal race, which is in like the classic series. Yeah.
That's quite cool when you go into like that and you pull up them things that kind of tie in with it. Because it's like you mentioned, like all these sort of past things, like the ancient stuff. It's always good when they tie it in. Like, we got it from like looking at like Norse gods, like for our name. And it's always cool when you can relate it to real world stuff like that, instead of just all being made up. It kind of gives it that extra kind of feeling of, you know, there's something behind this. Maybe like some of this, like, it's been brought on by like all these things that's happened in the past. So it's kind of cool. I love like looking into it and getting that history. And it just gives you like much more to the story that isn't actually in the story, but you can kind of build it yourself.
Yeah, we kind of like make our own theories. Like, it kind of like what we've started to do with Clara dying. Maybe she's not going to die at all, but we've wrote like a really good story for her, so who cares?
Yeah, maybe she's just got a cold and like she's just going to like pass that off. It'll be nothing. But we're just thinking she's dying just because we know that she's leaving. I think maybe that is kind of a mind game. We know she's leaving, so we're looking for something that's going to be wrong with her, and that could kind of explain it.
I think there's something really interesting as well, like the Doctor pointed out as well. Clara's kind of turning into a soldier. Like, she even had a gun at this point, and I know later on in the series she's going to have like a rocket launcher, mm-hmm. and the Doctor says he's kind of making people into warriors, and it's not something he's usually like accustomed to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as the season goes on, I think we're going to see that continued change in Clara, because she's very doctory. She's like really changing the way that she is, and she's really taking charge of like the situations. Like you said earlier about her being the one that kind of wanted to save the village and stay and fight, while the Doctor was telling everyone to run away. So it's a big change in it. I think in terms of the Doctor though, I don't know what it is, but going into this next episode, I think something could be up where this might be out of place and something does actually happen to Clara, but we don't actually see it before the next episode. Because I just kind of thought that it was a bit weird that we see Ishilda in episode 5, and then being immortal, she could run into the Doctor at any period in time, yet somehow it's straight in the next episode. And because Clara's not in that episode, it makes me wonder, does this episode take place before some of the events that's going to happen in season 9? So maybe if Clara does die at the end of season 9, this next episode that we're going to see takes place after Clara's death or something happening to her, and that's why she's not actually shown in any of these previews for the next episode. And I think one thing that kind of ties the two together is if that's the case, then the Doctor is then going back to the whole losing people and knowing how it feels, and he's meeting up with the Shilda, who's spent all this time now and is alone herself, and she's lost all these people, so they're kind of in the same boat. Maybe looking for this Eye of Hades as a way of maybe saving Clara or bringing her back, but we don't know that because we don't know what's happening in between.
It's all like really, really timey-wimey. And like, I will say that like when I watched this episode, it was like another one where it felt out of place. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but like even the start, like Clara was like randomly floating around in space and she was in danger and things, and I don't know, like it feels off. Like, I know we've said it, like for some of the other episodes, like we thought the Scarrow episodes were like maybe towards the end.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just like weird placing, and I think the thing that really threw us off was this is kind of billed as a two-parter, but it's not really a two-parter. It's like two standalone episodes, so it's weird how they're next to each other. I think there's something that could be in between them, but we just don't know that yet. And I think that is like the case of Doctor Who. You can always go back and fill something in between, and it gives you a completely different take on it. So if people are watching this next episode and thinking, you know, Clara's just teaching at the school and the Doctor's on this one by himself, then we could just assume that, but there could be something said in the episode that kind of implies something has happened to Clara, even though they don't say it. But I think that's something that I'll probably be looking out for, to see if there's an explanation given, and it's just like a subtle little line.
I think it was like a really good line from this episode that could kind of sum that up. The Doctor was talking about premonitions, and he said it's not actually, premonitions aren't false, it's just remembering the future in the wrong time, or something along those lines. Yeah,
like the problems of a time traveller. I think that's like a pretty cool way to go about it, because it was weird when he first seen a Shilda and he kind of stared at her like that, so it was cool that we got that little information. I don't know, like, if it makes too much sense, like the premonitions, but I think it's a good way to like look at it. I think if you like experience like a premonition or deja vu or something in person, then it's a kind of cool little explanation to give yourself as to what that is.
To me, it felt like a really weird thing to do. I don't understand why he had to think he saw her. He felt like it seemed like a really weird thing. And like in my head, I started to wonder, like, is it kind of like the whole river thing where the Doctor knows her in a different time where she doesn't know him but he knows her kind of web?
Yeah, it could be. It could be all out of order. And like, depending on how she kind of grows up, because we don't know how this immortality is going to actually affect her. She may still age, or she could be like Captain Jack where he doesn't appear to be aging. So she could like turn up in even the classic episodes and we've already encountered her, but she's looked completely different. She's had a different face, and it's before like the Doctor's actually met her. So she could even be explained as a past villain, and it's just a case of, you know, the Doctor hadn't known it was her at that time.
I definitely think she is going to be a huge character. I know Moffat said, oh, well, she's not been in it before or whatever. I definitely think there's more to her than Moffat's letting on. And talking of like being this super thing, what about the sunglasses? They were indestructible as well.
Well, they were destroyed this week, so I was glad to see the back of that. But then I watched the next week preview and I seen that they were back, and I was like, man, can we not just get rid of these?
I remember looking on Twitter, like, while it was on and we were live tweeting, like, there was hundreds of people going, yes, they've been destroyed, and then...
Everyone was so happy. And then bloomin' Stephen Moffat, he just ruined that happiness in an instant with a preview.
I think it was, like, another example, like, they weren't, not to my knowledge, they weren't used again, unless it was at the very end when he teleported Odin or whatever he was called off.
Yeah, well, you noticed this, like, as a little thing, and that he actually, like, grabbed them back off of Odin. So he's got that over half by. He's just going to glue them back together. You can put a bit of tape on and just keep on using them.
Or you can go to the cinema and just, like, upgrade one of those 3D pairs.
Yeah, just go for a pair of them. Look so much better. They look pretty much the same, to be fair.
Exactly.
But yeah, that kind of, like, covers the majority of the episode. One other little thing that I kind of noticed was when he decides that he is going to save a Shilda, he kind of calls out and he sort of looks at the heavens when he says this and says, to hell with you. And it made me think, who is he actually, like, talking to here? Could he be, like, saying this towards, like, the people that put the rules in place for the Time Lords on how they can actually change time? And talking of, like, all these repercussions, I was thinking maybe in the future as to what happens to kind of show why he shouldn't have done this, because something's going to happen that he's going to regret. Could the people that kind of police those rules come into this? Do you think that's possible?
I definitely think it's possible. Like, I kind of overlooked it until, like, you mentioned in your notes, and, like, the way it's done it, as if someone is listening, and it was kind of something we saw with the 10th Doctor, where he tried to, like, break the rules, like, the Waters on Mars, when he saved I can't remember what she was called, the woman.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like, no, you have to stick to the rules. And then she commits suicide to stop the rules being broken.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens when those rules are broken and they're not, like, justified.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll either be a case of, like, time finding a way to correct itself, or I think, like this, it could be a case of whoever put them rules in place, they actually, like, come in to kind of police it, and something happens because of his actions. And I think it's something that he's going to, like, live to regret. And I think it could end up with, like, the demise of Clara. But I think it'd be really cool to explain it and just have an episode where it covers, who put these rules in place and why they're in place. Because I don't think that's something I don't know if it's been explained in past Doctor Who in the classic series, but it's not something that's been covered in the new series, and I think that's something that'd be really interesting to see.
It's kind of interesting when you compare it to the previous episode, and he's very much going against the rules, like when, I can't remember his name, but he goes to save O'Donnell, and the Doctor's like, no way, we're not, like, breaking the rules. And yet, in this episode, he's very much like, right, we're breaking the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a strange one. I think it all depends on, like, the person and the way he is at the time. I think he just gets overcome with emotion, and, like, getting that flashback of his face, I think that's what's really pushed him into it. And then obviously, like, seeing it afterwards and kind of regretting that decision. So I think he knows he's done wrong. It's just a case of now waiting to see what happens as a result of it. So that kind of wraps up the episode. What do you think of next week's preview? Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, it looks like another it doesn't look overly serious, and it looks like another fun run out.
It should be a great episode. I'm just looking forward to seeing, like, how the time has passed and how this leads into it, because she seems to be a completely different character. So I think it should be a good episode. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to, like, the dynamic between the two and seeing the repercussions of the Doctor's choices.
It should be really cool. So that kind of brings us to the end of this episode, but let us know your thoughts on the episode itself and all of the talking points that were discussed. So what did you make of the reason behind the Doctor's face? Was the Doctor right to save Ashilda? What's with all the hybrids? Is it the season arc? And of course, what do you think of next week's preview? So let us know your thoughts in the comments, or you can get in touch with us via Twitter on the new Tardis Talk account at Tardis_talk. So make sure to let us know what you think. So we look forward to hearing your thoughts. But until next time.
See you later.